Discover how saving a mafia boss's heartbroken daughter unveiled an unexpected transformative journey. Jack Matthews rushed through the nightclub's chaos, the stench of sweat and spilled drinks clawing at his senses. A woman lay crumpled on the floor, surrounded by broken glass. As he knelt beside her, urgency crackled in every heartbeat. She was Sophia Romano, only daughter of Tony the Bull, the man whose shadow loomed over Jack's life. Loyalty to his family weighed heavily on him. They'd sacrificed everything for him to become a paramedic, yet here he was, a mere cog in the system, executed under the pressure of expectations. This call, like so many others, was a reminder of how far he'd strayed from his youthful dreams of painting and art. A flurry of thoughts swirled in Jack's mind as he bandaged Sophia's delicate wounds. Each gentle touch seemed to deepen his sense of conflict. She was both a victim and a sibling to the hypocrisy that chained him. The weight of that truth clung to him as he recalled his own family's burdens. Would they demand him to bring justice upon the Romano name, to expose the man who crushed lives to preserve his empire? But here was Sophia, her vibrant soul laid bare as she dared to dream of a life free from her father's legacy. Jack felt a desperate tug of war in his chest. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Jack wrestled with his moral compass while disbelief coursed through him. With every soft whisper from Sophia about her aspirations, sculpting, painting, finding herself, an agonizing weight settled in his stomach. They were both entrapped in worlds relentless in their demands, yet forged a strange connection in their shared struggle to be more than their past. Who was he to rob her of her chances, simply because her father represented everything he loathed? As he bandaged her arms, Jack's mind raced with the unspoken truth. He remembered the whispers about Tony Romano's last crime, a betrayal that shattered families in their community, leaving scars that festered for years. Could he offer this fragile woman a semblance of a future while knowing her father was the architect of his town's suffering? Confusion turned to despair, and Jack chased errant thoughts, each one pulling him closer to his breaking point. He could sense that this bond with Sophia was skirting a disaster. The deeper they connected, the more danger lurked just beyond their fragile sanctuary. His heart thundered with unvoiced fears. Could he betray her family's legacy for the hope of maintaining his own integrity? What if the extent of her father's crimes shattered her world completely? Jack's hands trembled as he finished bandaging. Life had tethered them in this moment, teetering on the brink of choice, but the truth gnawed at his insides. Moments of quiet intimacy crumbled beneath the burden of impending revelations. And as they shared a lingering glance, something snapped. Everything they worked to protect, all they aspired to, could vanish if Tony ever learned about this connection. The air crackled between them, and outside, sirens wailed, a chilling reminder of lives hanging in the balance. Jack stood on the cusp of chaos, his resolve fading. How far would he go to guard their fragile bond, and what would it cost him? With the world around them teetering on the edge, Jack was left wrestling with an unspeakable truth that threatened to unravel everything. Jack's heart pounded as the sirens drew closer, signaling the impending arrival of law enforcement, and undoubtedly, Tony's men. The weight of the moment felt oppressive, thick with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. He glanced at Sophia, whose eyes sparkled with unshed tears, filled with a mix of hope and fear that resonated deeply within him. Here was a woman yearning to break free from the chains of her father's legacy, and he stood at the precipice of her liberation. In that fleeting instant, Jack recognized the truth. This was not merely about her survival, it was about his own. How long could he remain a bystander in a narrative that demanded a choice? Can he choose justice over familial loyalty when, only moments ago, he had stood convinced he was a mere cog in the machine? It suddenly felt more complicated than a simple black and white decision. As he finished wrapping her wounds, Jack recalled the laughter of his younger days, the thrilling excitement of dabbing paint on a blank canvas, oblivious to the burdens that adulthood would place upon him. His dreams of becoming an artist had always been overshadowed by the unsparing expectations of his family. Yet now, as he faced the reality of his emotionally charged situation, he felt a flicker of defiance igniting within. Maybe it was time to reclaim the brush and paint a new picture, a life defined by his choices rather than those dictated by others. The door of the nightclub burst open, and uniformed officers flooded in, the panic and chaos accelerating around them. Jack knew he had to make a decision. He had already crossed a line by bandaging Sophia. Now he had to decide whether to protect her from her father's reach or let the law take its course, condemning her for the sins of the man who had brought so much grief to the town. "Jack!" Sophia's whispered plea jolted him from his reverie. "What do we do now?" Her voice trembled as she searched his face for a sign, a hint of wisdom he was still struggling to find. He swallowed hard, feeling the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He could either let the police take control and risk Sophia being taken back to the very hell from which he thought he was rescuing her, or he could act. Acting could mean condemning himself even further, a choice laden with peril. Yet the thought of leaving her to face her father alone was unbearable. Jack felt the urgency of the moment transform into a tangible force, propelling him to act. "Stay quiet," he said, lowering his voice, his mind racing. "I'm going to get you out of here." The officer's harsh commands filled the air, but Jack's focus narrowed to Sophia. He took her hand tightly, their pulses sinking in mutual desperation. They edged toward the rear exit, plotting a path invisible to everyone else, shrouded in the crowd's chaos. As they slipped into the cool night air, the weight of their decision hung heavily, each step bringing fresh terror and exhilaration. What sort of future were they forging together? Was their course one of liberation, or were they simply substituting one prison for another? Jack pulled Sophia closer, scanning the alleyway for threats. He felt something within him shift, the old Jack, the artist, reawakening to the possibility of a new life outside the confines of expectation and the shadows of the past. Danger loomed, but with it the promise of creation and growth. They were running from more than a father's wrath. They were embracing the uncertainty of freedom. With each step, the stakes rose higher, but so did Jack's determination. He refused to let fear dictate his actions any longer. It was time to confront the injustices that had entangled him for so long, starting with the man whose power hung over their heads like a storm cloud. As they turned a corner into an alley thick with darkness, Jack's heart raced with newfound purpose, but a chilling realization stung through him. He had not just run away. He was running into the unknown, and the world beyond promised confrontation and, perhaps, his greatest test yet. The moment was fragile, and Jack couldn't shake the thought. What would he really have to sacrifice for both of them to find their freedom? An unseen figure moved in the shadows, and Jack felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him. What he didn't know was that this was just the beginning of a more perilous journey, one that would challenge everything he believed about loyalty, love, and truth. Jack's pulse thundered in his ears as he and Sophia fled deeper into the alley. The darkness enveloped them like thick fog, but that was nothing compared to the storm raging inside him. The white-knuckled grip he had on her hand seemed to forge a bond between them, a shared understanding that this reckless flight might be their only chance at liberation together. "Where do we go now?" Sophia whispered, her breath hitching with every hurried step. Jack's mind raced, searching for a plan amid the chaos. He didn't have the luxury of time to pinpoint their destination, but the urgency of their situation pressed him forward. "Just a little further," he replied, gesturing towards a flickering streetlight just ahead. The weak illumination offered a semblance of guidance, even as shadows danced like ghosts around them. With each step, Jack reacted to the fear surging through him. The initial instinct to protect Sophia grew into a determination to redefine his life. He realized he was not just running from Tony's men. He was running towards defining his own reality, liberated from a future dictated by family legacy. In that moment, he recalled the aspirations of his youth, the joy of painting, the thrill of creativity. Could he dare to think of those dreams again? "Jack," Sophia's voice broke through his reverie, "what do we do if they catch us?" Facing the magnitude of her question, Jack felt the weight settle heavily on both their shoulders. "If they catch us," he said, carefully crafting his response, "we won't let them take you back. We're going to fight back." Sophia's eyes widened, a mix of hope and uncertainty washing over her features. It was a bold statement coming from him, but acknowledging his determination filled Jack with resolve. They had already crossed a line by running away. Now they needed to empower themselves even further. He began to consider their options as they emerged from the alley. The streets were quieter here, but he discerned a latent energy pulsating from the city, people who lived under the shadow of intimidation just like them. His thoughts darted between the prospects of living a life driven by passion and the realistic demands of survival. "Listen," he said, tight-lipped but insistent, "there's a diner on the corner. We can hide there for a while and figure out our next move." Without waiting for an answer, Jack led her through the dim streets, impatience fueling his urgency. The neon lights of the diner came into view, casting a welcoming glow against the darkened backdrop of their world. As they stepped inside, the familiar scent of coffee and greasy food enveloped them like a warm embrace, momentarily easing their terror. Sweat beaded on Jack's brow, but he hoped the diner could provide shelter, a sanctuary, to plan, regroup, and strategize how to combat the forces threatening to entrap Sophia once more. The bustling life of the cafe was a stark contrast to the turmoil outside, but Jack felt acutely aware of the danger that loomed. While Sophia found a booth at the back and sank into the vinyl seat, Jack approached the counter and ordered 2 coffees, his mind racing with strategies. As he turned, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror behind the counter. The reflection that stared back felt foreign. It was a man driven by love and fear, but more than that, someone who had decided that surrendering to fate was not an option. He knew now that running would only get them so far. He needed to confront Tony, face a man who had woven despair into their lives. But as Jack approached the booth, doubt flickered in the pit of his stomach. "Jack," Sophia's voice trembled, "what if he comes after us?" The thought sliced through his resolve, presenting an unforeseeable consequence of their choice. Jack leaned closer, gaze steady and unwavering. "Then we will be ready for him." But could readiness equate to survival? The concept of confronting psychological demons scared Jack more than the potential of Tony's retaliation. All at once, it became clear. This journey wasn't solely about saving Sophia. It was as much about liberating himself from the chains he had unknowingly worn for far too long. As they sat in the booth, 2 mugs steaming between them, Jack felt the walls close in on his resolve. The flickering fluorescent lights and the idle chatter around them faded, leaving only their shared fears and hopes. The stakes of their decision hung like the aroma of coffee, potent and overwhelming. As the door to the diner swung open, Jack's heart dropped. He could feel that the moment of truth was fast approaching. Would they find the strength to face their greatest fears, or would they crumble under the burden of their choices? The world outside felt palpable, a battleground of choices signaling that the real fight was just beginning. Jack's grip tightened around the coffee mug, ready to face whatever came next. But in the silence that followed, he questioned, Was he prepared to confront not only Tony, but also the remnants of his own hesitations? Jack stared into the depths of his coffee, the swirling steam mirroring the chaos of his thoughts. How had he arrived at this moment? Each sip of the bitter liquid seemed to stoke the fire of purpose within him. Time stretched, the clamor of the diner fading into a soft echo. This wasn't just about Sophia anymore. It was a battle for his own identity. "You know," Jack began, studying the table as he spoke, "I've always felt trapped in this role my family carved out for me." His gaze drifted to Sophia, whose expression was a mix of confusion and curiosity. "I chased after what they wanted, prestige, wealth, but it was never really me." As she absorbed his words, he saw a flicker of understanding flash across her face. Jack's voice gained strength as he pressed on. "Tony doesn't just control your life, he's been pulling my strings too. I'm done being part of this puppeteering narrative." Sophia leaned forward, her eyes wide with anticipation. "But how do you plan to stop him?" It was a significant question. How was he going to transform this anger and resolution into something actionable? Electric energy pulsed through him as he grasped what he needed. They had to use what they both knew about Tony, his methods, his weaknesses. Jack began to see their potential power as a combined force. "We start by gathering information, pinning down his movements," Jack replied, the gears of his mind clicking into place. "If I can understand how he operates, I can turn the tables. We can leverage the chaos he thrives in." The determination fueling his words prompted a spark of belief in Sophia. "The restaurant next door, Tony frequents it. We could blend in, make ourselves scarce until we know more," Sophia suggested, her voice trembling slightly but edged with newfound resolve. Jack considered this. "It's risky, but we can do this together. It's about unearthing his vulnerabilities, about reclaiming our lives." He leaned back, feeling the weight of the diner's ambiance start to lift ever so slightly. Sophia moved to speak, but the moment was interrupted as the door creaked open with a disconcerting slowness. A figure stood silhouetted against the neon glow, a stocky man with a familiar swagger that sent chills bolting down Jack's spine. It was one of Tony's associates, someone he recognized all too well. The blood rushed to Jack's ears, adrenaline coiling in his gut. "Stay calm," he whispered to Sophia, his mind racing through contingencies. They had to remain inconspicuous, to resist drawing attention. But the panic gnawed at him. It was no longer just Tony. This man was a reminder that the life he'd tried to sidestep coiled around him again, tightening like a vice. Jack's heart pounded in rhythm to the footsteps drawing closer, assessing his options rapidly. Instinct kicked in as he dropped his voice. "We can't stay here. They'll lead him to us if they spot us together." Sophia nodded, anxiety flickering across her features. They had initiated this leap into the unknown. Now they had to navigate it deftly. As the associate continued to loom near the counter, Jack gestured towards the back exit, urgency carving his features. They slid out of the booth, moving with the stealth of shadows. The bright glare of the diner blindsided him momentarily. But as they slipped past, he felt the stirrings of life within him awaken. He was not just fleeing, he was stepping closer to a future he could shape. They dashed through the alley behind the diner, limbs charged with a mix of fear and defiance. Jack's heart raced as they broke into the open street beyond, sweat forming an anxious sheen on his brow. "Jack," Sophia said breathlessly as they rounded the corner, "what's next? What if he finds out we're planning something?" The weight of her question pressed down heavily. Jack halted, breath momentarily escaping his lungs. "Then we make sure that he wishes he hadn't." He pointed ahead to a darkened corner where they could gather their thoughts without prying eyes. He drew a deep breath, melding his fears with determination. This is where it truly begins. No more shadows, no more puppet strings. As they shifted into the shadows, Jack felt the enormity of what lay ahead crowding in. Could he really confront not just Tony, but the person he'd become in the process? The stakes were as high as his resolve, but an unexpected resolve surged within him too. Here, beneath the streetlights, he felt a pulse of liberation. This fight was no longer just for Sophia. It was for his own life, reclaimed and rewritten. And as they disappeared, one question loomed. Would he be the author of his own destiny, or merely a pawn on a chessboard ruled by fear? Jack pressed back against the cool brick of the alley wall, the shadows wrapping around him like a cloak. He could hear the distant chatter of pedestrians, their lives stretching out in stark contrast to the bubble of adrenaline that constricted his senses. Each beat of his heart was a call to action, a reminder of what was at stake in the fight against Tony. Sophia stood beside him, her breath still ragged from their hasty escape. The fear in her eyes only fueled him. He needed to become the hero of this narrative, not just for her, but for himself. "We need to get to a safe place and figure out our next steps," Jack said, urgency thrumming in his voice. "Do you know anywhere we can go?" Sophia asked, glancing around as if expecting Tony's men to come rushing down the alley any second. "What about my old college buddy, Eric? He has a small workshop 2 blocks from here. It won't be glamorous, but it's safe." Jack scoured his mind for the details of old friendships, ones he had neglected while dancing to Tony's tune. Sophia nodded, determination replacing the uncertainty that once clouded her expression. They stepped back into motion, weaving through the streets, each footfall dripping with intention. Jack felt a flicker of guilt for not having been more involved in Sophia's struggles sooner, but there was no room for regret now. He had to focus. As they turned the corner and approached the workshop, a sense of nostalgia washed over him. The place smelled of paint and metal, a world Jack had initially wanted to be part of before being swept up in familial obligations and expectations. "I used to think I could be an artist," he admitted under his breath, the words surprising him. It was a revelation about who he had been versus the person he had become. "You still can be," Sophia replied, her voice laced with encouragement. "We're reshaping our lives together." He pushed open the heavy door to the workshop, the hinges creaking in protest. Dust motes hung in the air like memories waiting to be revived. Jack scoured the forgotten canvases propped against the walls and felt an urge to reconnect with something deeper inside. "I won't waste this opportunity, not for myself or for you," he stated, resolved to rediscover not only his own voice, but also the strength that lay dormant in Sophia. "We're not just going to survive, we're going to thrive." They huddled in a corner away from the expansive windows, the late afternoon sun casting slants of light into the dim room. Jack drew out the rough sketch he had started, a compass surrounded by swirling waves, symbolizing direction, hope, and his tumultuous journey. "What's that?" Sophia asked. Leaned in, curiosity lighting her features. "It was a reminder of where I wanted to go," he said, rolling the paper tighter as though sealing away old dreams. "This is about more than just taking down Tony. It's about rebuilding our lives." "Then let's draw a new plan, together." Sophia's eyes sparkled with determination, and Jack found himself smiling, the warmth of her spirit igniting a flicker of purpose. As they crafted a strategy to gather intel on Tony, they talked about the methods he used and how they could apply that knowledge to their own advantage. Jack mapped out potential contacts, old college friends, former employees of Tony, even rival gang members. The labyrinth of connections was dizzying, but with each step, they were reclaiming their narratives. He felt alive, the act of planning intertwining with their shared defiance against the life they had been handed. Jack paused, caught in a moment of introspection. But what if we fail? What if Tony retaliates? The question hung in the air, heavy with consequences. Sophia took a step closer. "We'll face it together. If we fall forward. That's how we learn. Isn't that what you've wanted all along? To find your truth?" Her words sparked a need for clarity within him. "I want to find my truth, not just for me, but to prove to him, Tony, that he doesn't own me. I'm more than just a pawn." They locked eyes, an unspoken pact forming between them. This was their awakening, their rebellion, and the beginning of taking back their lives. Outside, the hum of the city continued unabated, but in the workshop, possibilities danced through the air. Jack felt a determination surging within him. The time had come to face fears, not only of Tony, but of who he was meant to become. He turned to Sophia, excitement bubbling beneath his stern face. "Let's execute this plan and turn the tables," he declared. "It's time for us to take control." As they immersed themselves in strategy, Jack's resolve solidified. But lurking in the depths of his mind was an unsettling thought. What if unearthing Tony's weaknesses revealed something darkly unexpected about himself as well? The deeper they dug, the more he feared what they might unearth. The workshop enveloped Jack with a peculiar mixture of warmth and nostalgia, an echo of dreams as distant as the canvases lined against the wall. As he stood with Sophia, the echo of his past collided with the urgency of their present. They strategized quietly, voices low and filled with purpose. Jack felt different. This wasn't the aimless drifting he had succumbed to under Tony's influence. This was intention. This was power. "Tonight, we make our first move," he articulated, feeling a sense of gravity in his own words. "We need to get in touch with Eric. He's in the know. We can leverage that." Each word emanated a mix of determination and fear. He was no longer just planning a defense, but an active resurgence. Sophia bit her lip, her eyes fixed on him, questioning but resolute. "And if he doesn't want to get involved? Or if he's too scared? We can't assume everyone has the same fire we do." Jack acknowledged the truth in her words. Panic beckoned him to retreat, to clutch at safety, but he refused to let it steer him. "Then we find someone else. We can't stop, Sophia. We need to keep pushing." The walls felt alive, their once dormant stories rekindled by his surge of determination. The scent of sawdust and paint seemed to vibrate with the energy buzzing inside him. Here, he felt a brief flash of who he might have been without the weight of Tony's chain. "Okay," Sophia nodded, a flicker of strength blooming within her. "Together, then, we define our path." With newfound clarity, Jack couldn't help but scrutinize what it truly meant to be more than just a pawn. Thoughts swirled in his mind. Who was he really? Had he ever truly known? He had let fear and obligation masquerade as practicality, stifling his individuality. Yet, standing beside Sophia now, he questioned everything. Could he bring out the artist in himself again? "Let's go," Jack announced, stepping toward the door with renewed energy. "We'll find Eric, and we'll figure this out." The door swung open with a symphony of creaks and crackles, and they stepped into the evening, the shadows swirling around them. The cool air pierced his skin, grounding him momentarily. He felt the hustle of the city around them, unaware of their impending confrontation. Directions spun in his mind like chaotic brushstrokes on a canvas. He glanced at Sophia, who seemed to radiate an electric confidence that sparked his own. What if Eric doesn't have answers? What if he's too embedded with Tony? "Then we take it as a lesson, Jack," she replied, her voice steady. "Every risk is an opportunity to learn. There's no way to succeed without stepping into the unknown." Her words ignited a resolve within him. Each encounter with the past, whether it was Eric or someone else like him, was integral to shaping the future they aspired to create. As they navigated toward Eric's workshop, the landscape morphed into a vibrant web of where they once stood and where they were headed. Each person they passed fueled thoughts of connection and resentment alike. Jack realized how intricately their lives were entangled with everyone around them. The threads of ambition and fear contrasted sharply against the backdrop of unyielding fate. The moment they arrived at Eric's place, tension pooled in Jack's stomach. He was gripped by an urgent need for validation, a yearning to reclaim the man he had lost in the shuffle. This was not just about breaking free from Tony. This was a reawakening, a chance to reclaim his identity through connections he had nearly extinguished. Jack hesitated, hand raised to knock. "What if he turns us away?" The words emerged heavier than expected, full of dread and desperation. Sophia's fingers brushed against his arm gently. "If he does, we try again. That's the spirit we've ignited together. The door creaked open, revealing Eric's surprised expression, and Jack felt the weight of unspoken sentiments hanging in the air. What lay ahead would determine not only the success of their mission, but the resurgence of his own spirit. As they stepped over the threshold, Jack's heart raced with the thrill of confronting both his past and his future, aware that within this confrontation could dwell lessons he hadn't anticipated. The moment of self-discovery was near, teetering on the edge of revelation. But could he embrace it, or would fear once again stake its claim? The thought lingered like the scent of paint that filled the air, a reminder that artistry was all about courage. And then a sudden noise echoed from within the workshop, a muffled argument followed by the clink of metal. Jack froze, instincts igniting once more. What awaited them on the other side of the door wasn't clear, but he understood one thing. Their journey was about to escalate, and he would have to confront far more than just the shadows of his past. "What was that?" Sophia whispered, her gaze darting toward the sound, eyes wide with anticipation. Jack turned, caught between apprehension and excitement. "Let's find out," he replied, resolute. As uncertainty clouded his heart, a flicker of unquenchable courage ignited within. The moment to face his truth was no longer distant. It was here. The moment the door swung open wider, the sights and sounds within the workshop crashed over Jack like waves. Eric, an imposing figure with frizzed hair and paint-stained overalls, stood at the center of a chaotic scene. Fragments of conversations filled the air, words like money, Tony, and trust. A part of Jack wanted to turn back, to wrap himself in a cocoon of safety and forget all about this confrontation. But there was no turning back now. He had already crossed the threshold. Jack inhaled sharply, his heart pounding like a drum. The mild hesitation caught by Eric's gaze was a mirror to his own doubt. Yet in that charged exchange, Jack felt an unfamiliar flicker of resolve. He wasn't merely a ghost haunting the edges of someone else's narrative. He was a survivor of his own struggles, and he had come here for validation, not just answers. "Eric," he started, voice steady despite internal tremors, "we need your help." Sophia stepped up beside him, echoing his sentiments. "Things are changing, and if we don't act now, we risk losing everything." The tension shifted, an awareness settling in the air. Eric's initial surprise melted into skepticism as he processed their request, the faint shadows of loyalty to Tony threading through his eyes. Jack's stomach twisted. That loyalty had once enveloped him, detailing what he thought was a simple path. But now, standing here with Sophia, he could see all the cracks in that facade. "Why should I assist you?" Eric challenged, arms crossed tightly. "The last time I caught wind of a rebellion, it didn't end well for anyone involved." Jack clenched his fists, feeling. The weight of Eric's words landed heavily on his shoulders. This was a pivotal moment, not just for him, but for the fate of their mission, and he needed to ripple out his own courage. "Because we're not backing down this time. We know the stakes, and we're willing to take risks to reclaim our lives." The confidence surged within him, each uttered syllable catalyzing the resolve he had built throughout the evening. Standing boldly before Eric ignited unsealed memories. He wasn't just a puppet on strings anymore. He could be a catalyst of change. Yet Jack also recognized that with this newfound power came an enormous responsibility. Would Eric see that too? "Fine," Eric replied reluctantly, his posture unyielding, though his eyes softened with profound contemplation. "But I'm not making any promises. Tony's grip is tighter than you know." "Then let us be the ones to loosen it," Sophia interjected, her voice fierce and unwavering. "We're asking for guidance, not hand-holding. We need intel, Eric. This will be as much your journey as it is ours." "Talk is cheap," he countered, though Jack noticed the flicker of intrigue in his eyes. With a deliberate inhale, Jack stepped closer, vulnerability spilling through his resolute guise. "Then let us show you we have something worth risking." He understood now. This wasn't merely a negotiation. It was a declaration, a rebirth. As Jack spoke, he realized there was power in his vulnerability. It stripped away pretenses and revealed the naked human experience driving all of them. Whether it was regret or desire for connection, they were all tethered by a shared struggle against Tony's reign. The muffled arguments behind Eric had dissipated into an awkward silence since he had diverted his attention to them. Jack sensed the weight of expectation hanging in the air. In this moment, he palpably felt the pulse of self-discovery push against the walls he had once built. Was Eric willing to join them, or would he retreat to the safety of familiarity, chaining himself to his past allegiance? Then, a thought struck him intensely. What if the choice we make when we are on the brink of transformation ultimately defines us? Jack sensed that whatever would unfold next would hold significant influence, not just over their current predicament, but on the essence of who he was becoming. "All right, I'll help you," Eric finally relented, finally allowing a small crack in his guarded nature. "But you better be prepared for what's coming. We'll need a solid plan and to act fast." Jack felt a rush of exhilaration. This was a vital turning point in their mission. It occurred to him that every connection, every fragment of courage gathered along the way, led them to this moment. As Eric laid out the complexities ahead, Jack felt the storm of resolve raging within him crank up a notch. No longer was this merely an escape. It was a strategic maneuver into the unknown, a path toward reclamation of their lives. Just then, the sharp clank of metal echoed from the back of the workshop, pulling everyone's attention. Eric shot the door an apprehensive glance. The chill in the air returned, heavy with the weight of something far more ominous lurking just outside their immediate vision. "What was that?" Sophia asked, eyes wide again. Jack's heart sank, his instincts flared. They didn't just step into a world of risk. They had wandered into a battlefield of unresolved conflicts where danger could lurk at any moment, and it was time to confront it. "Looks like our night just became more interesting," Eric muttered, a hint of warning reflected in his words. Jack felt the tension thicken, like fog rolling in, blurring the line between allies and adversaries. As the echoes of uncertainty enveloped them, one vital question loomed in Jack's mind. Would he be ready to face the revelations waiting just around the corner? The metallic clang reverberated through the workshop, a stark reminder of the world just beyond their makeshift sanctuary. Jack felt his heart quicken, each beat pounding a warning in his chest. The palpable uncertainty weighed heavily in the air. He glanced at Eric, whose expression had morphed back into one of serious contemplation. "What's our plan?" Jack urged, urgency gripping him. Every second counted, and with danger looming, deliberation felt like a luxury they couldn't afford. Eric's brow furrowed as he surveyed the surroundings, assessing the risks. "We need intel," he replied, his voice low but firm. "We can't act blind. There are too many eyes on us right now." Sophia crossed her arms, visibly agitated. "Then we need to get our hands dirty. What do you suggest?" "First, we split up," Eric said. "I'll head to the old warehouse on 5th. I have contacts there who can give us some clues about Tony's movement. You two," he paused, contemplating their capabilities. "You'll need to get a sense of his inner circle. Maybe one of them is willing to talk. We can use any leverage we can find." Jack stood taller, adrenaline surging through him. "I can manage that. I know a few guys who hang around Tony's place." He instinctively reached for the pocket where his phone lay, a surge of confidence washing over him. "What about me?" Sophia asked, eyes fierce but uncertain. "If I'm chasing shadows, I'm of no use to you guys." Jack shot her a steady look. "We need you to be our voice, Sophia. If anyone can turn heads and distract, it's you. You should stay close to Eric. Make sure he doesn't get caught off guard. We're stronger together." "Fine," she conceded, grudgingly, but Jack could see her resolve building within. The atmosphere shifted, a hardening of purpose blossoming among them as they nestled into their roles. Jack could feel his own determination solidifying like cement. This wasn't just about confronting Tony anymore. It was about reclaiming their lives and finding the strength within themselves to make a change. Eric nodded, a smile ghosting his lips. You both seem ready, but be careful. Tony doesn't take kindly to threats against his empire, and once we start, there's no turning back. I'm ready, Jack replied, though a flicker of doubt shot through him. Could he truly handle what lay ahead? He recalled the moments where he had faltered, shying away from confrontation. But those days were behind him. He had fought to get here. This was his moment to prove not just to them, but also to himself that he could become a leader. As the three conspired in low tones, the shadows danced in the corner of the workshop, a reminder of the risks ahead. Eric tapped the map, highlighting crucial locations they needed to scout. We'll regroup in 3 hours. Stay sharp. The agreement forged a bond of unspoken understanding between them. They were in this together, ready to dive headfirst into an uncertain melee. Jack stepped out into the alley, each footfall resounding like a drumbeat, echoing within him. The night was cooler than he expected, the breeze amplifying his excitement. He fought through the initial jolt of anxiety as he approached Tony's territory. Would he find the information he needed? Would he have the courage to face the men who had once intimidated him? Thoughts clamored through his mind. This was more than a rescue mission. It was a test of his mettle. Beneath his uncertainty lay a raw, burgeoning strength he had never acknowledged until now. He had made a choice to step into the fray, and with that choice came the possibility of growth he had long craved. As he neared the rendezvous point with the hoodlums he knew from his past, he braced himself for confrontation. Would they see the change in him, or would he crumble under the weight of their scrutiny? Thoughts clamored through his mind. This was more than a rescue mission. It was a test of his mettle. Beneath his uncertainty lay a raw, burgeoning strength he had never acknowledged until now. He had made a choice to step into the fray, and with that choice came the possibility of growth he had long craved. As he neared the rendezvous point with the hoodlums he knew from his past, he braced himself for confrontation. Would they see the change in him, or would he crumble under the weight of their scrutiny? In that precarious moment, a voice within him whispered, "You're not that scared kid anymore. Embrace the challenge." But as Jack approached the familiar haunt, a familiar face emerged from the shadows, a face he didn't expect to see, and one that could unravel everything he was trying to build. "Jack," the figure called, "I didn't think I'd find you here." Jack's breath caught in his throat. One unexpected ally could change everything, or lead him down a path of irrevocable chaos. Would he find support in this encounter, or a bitter reminder of the stakes at hand? The mix of emotions surged within him, his heart racing in tandem with the looming uncertainty ahead. Jack squinted into the dim light, recognition flooding his senses with adrenaline. It was Mia, Tony's daughter, toughened by the weight of her father's legacy, yet flickering with an air of vulnerability that pulled at Jack. She hadn't crossed his mind since the last time they tangled, in memories of innocence lost amid Mafia shadows. "Why are you here?" he asked, trying to mask his surprise with an edge of authority. "Isn't this a bit dangerous for you?" She stepped closer, her voice a blend of defiance and uncertainty. "I could ask you the same thing. You've shifted since the last time we met, Jack. What's your angle?" Her piercing gaze forced an uncomfortable unease. A wave of introspection. He felt like an imposter wearing borrowed courage. Could he convince her he wasn't still the hesitant kid she remembered? He squared his stance. "I'm not here for games. I need to know what you know about your father's circle, his weaknesses, anyone willing to talk." Mia narrowed her eyes, but remained silent, as if weighing the risk of disobedience against trust. "And why would I help you?" she shot back, defiance crackling in the air between them. "Because you're trapped too," Jack replied, stepping closer as vulnerability made him bolder. "You don't want this life. I know it. Help me and we can both break free." Her expression shifted, the granite facade cracking just enough to reveal something softer beneath. She looked away, her thoughts visibly colliding. Jack's heart raced at this opportunity. The moment felt pivotal in shaping both their fates. "I've been watching," she finally admitted, her voice dropping. "You've grown up. I can tell you're not the same kid who couldn't stand up to the pressures of this life." "I'm not," he affirmed, emboldened by her acknowledgement. He felt a flicker of respect building between them, a shared understanding. "And I'm not asking just for me. This is bigger than personal gain. We don't have to follow the blueprint our parents left us." A silence enveloped them, a mutual acknowledgement of the stakes that stretched beyond their tangled pasts. Jack's resolve solidified. He needed to convince her that they could reclaim agency over their futures. "What's the next step?" Mia asked, suddenly leaning in closer, her tone shifting from skepticism to collaboration. "Information is our currency. I need contacts that will talk, people your father trusts." He watched her reactions closely, understanding the gravity behind each word. This wasn't merely about gathering intel, it signified a challenge to redefine their identities forged by familial bonds. Mia nodded slowly, vulnerability creeping back into her expression. "I know a few, but there's a price for this knowledge, a price you may not be ready for." He scoffed slightly, fueled by adrenaline and stubbornness. "I've come this far. Whatever it is, I'm willing to pay it." Yet doubt lingered in the depths of his mind. Was he really capable of handling what the revelation might cost? "Okay, follow me," she said, her decision forming like a pact. As they slipped further into the depths of Tony's territory, an unexpected alliance began to take root. Anxiety coiled within Jack, but he steeled his resolve, determined to become the man he had vowed to be. Mia pointed out their destination, a rundown bar he recognized, a nexus of information and dark dealings. As they entered, the rancid scent of stale beer and secrets enveloped them, and Jack's pulse quickened. The risks escalated as the ghosts of his past loomed larger. "Stick close," she warned, her tone suddenly intense. "If things go sideways, you need to trust me and follow my lead." Jack nodded, the gravity of the moment pressing down on him. The burgeoning strength he felt moments earlier now felt vulnerable against the palpable reality of his surroundings. Could he truly navigate this chaotic underworld, or was he stepping deeper into a trap laid by the very fate he sought to escape? In the dim light of the bar, as they approached a table filled with familiar faces, he felt the weight of expectation heavier than before. This was his moment to prove not only to Mia, but to himself, that he was more than a scared kid. The air crackled with anticipation, the stakes higher than ever. But just as their plan began to unfold, Jack noticed a shadow shift behind him, a familiar figure that sent a jolt of fear through his spine. Could he afford another mistake that might threaten everything he had begun to build? "Jack," the voice called, sending chills down his spine. "You're back in the game, but are you ready for what's to come?" Jack Matthews inhaled deeply, feeling the moment of uncertainty envelop him like a thick fog. Here he stood, not as the frightened paramedic caught in a web of familial expectations, but as a man determined to take back control of his life. He could hardly believe the transformation within himself since the night he bandaged Sophia Romano's wounds. Now, as he navigated the chaotic underworld of Tony the Bull Romano, the confrontation he craved with the looming figure of Tony felt imminent. His heart raced not just from fear, but from a profound sense of purpose. Each encounter brought him one step closer to confronting the architect of his past and forging his own path. The artist he had long silenced was wrestling back to life. The run-down bar thrummed with life, laughter intermingling with the undercurrent of danger. As he and Mia approached a table with familiar faces, adrenaline surged within him. He could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken question. Would they accept him? Would he fold under pressure or rise to the occasion? "Jack!" a voice boomed from the back of the bar, drawing all attention. It was Marco, an old acquaintance, laughter spilling from his lips as he spotted Jack among the familiar crowd. A sense of dread gripped Jack's heart. Marco and Tony had tangled in business deals before. This union could either signal his acceptance into this world or spell doom. "Thought you'd be too scared to return," Marco taunted, eyes glinting with mischief. Jack squared his shoulders, summoning every ounce of newfound courage. "I'm not here for games, Marco. I want to talk about Tony's dealings." The laughter faded as tensions rose. Marco's eyes narrowed, assessing. "You sure you want to take that route? The last time someone crossed paths with Tony, well, let's just say they disappeared." Jack's resolve did not waver. He realized at that moment how far he had come. No longer a cog in the machine, he was beginning to carve out his identity on his own terms. "I'm willing to face the consequences," Jack said firmly. "We're not looking to start a war. We want to free ourselves from the chains of our legacies." A ripple of intrigue passed through the group as they exchanged glances, the tension mounting. Jack felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Perhaps he was not alone after all. Mia shifted beside him, her presence grounding him amid the fray. It was a delicate balance. There was potential here, but also danger in exposing oneself. "Some of us are not content with our paths. Help us, and you'll find loyalty more valuable than fear," Mia added, confidence dancing in her voice. "Loyalty?" Marco laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in his tone. "What makes you think I'd assist a couple of traitors?" Jack stepped forward, heart pounding. "Because loyalty is only powerful if it leads to growth and change, not just blind obedience. This life doesn't work for us anymore. We're done being pawns." The gravity of what he'd said hung in the air. For the first time, he could see the spark of interest in Marco's eyes. Against all odds, Marco leaned back, folding his arms. "You've got guts, Matthews, that's for sure. But know this, if you're going against Tony, expect him to retaliate. You ready for that?" Jack nodded, determination coursing through him like wildfire. More now than ever, he felt alive. And as the tension shifted in the room, the tides of the situation began to turn. "All right," Marco conceded, leaning forward with an inscrutable expression. "I'll share what I can, but be warned, once you step into this world, you can't back out. You want power? You need to prove yourself." And so it began. A turbulent alliance was forged under the dim light of the bar. Jack felt the winds of change at his back. Every piece of intel exchanged brought forth a rush of empowerment. He was harnessing not just his knowledge of the past, but his vision for the future. He had finally taken control of the narrative, reshaping his identity as intentionally as he once had with paint on canvas. 2 hours later, the trio met back at Eric's workshop, energy pulsing through their shared revelations. "Tony's hold isn't as strong as we thought," Jack explained, confidence evident in his voice. "Marco sees the potential in us wanting to break free." Sophia's eyes lit up with hope. The plan was materializing into something tangible and palpable. However, shadows lingered. As Jack surveyed the scattered papers, a creeping anticipation enveloped him. His gut tightened with each new detail revealed about Tony's operations. This would be no small confrontation. It would stir the depths of a tormented legacy. Yet with each shared strategy leaning into their courage, Jack felt the flickers of a new identity forming. He wasn't simply the artist chasing a distant dream, but a changemaker igniting a rebellion of his own design. A sense of satisfaction washed over him. The man he had long wanted to become was finally emerging from beneath the layers of expectation. "Remember, this is about us reclaiming our futures," Eric reminded them, his voice steady. "Once we initiate this, there's no turning back." A sense of stability formed around Jack as they made their pact, their shared purpose forging them into something more than individuals intertwined. This was a growing force of change, fueled by raw honesty and accountability. As they solidified their plans, Jack felt an intense wave of achievement surge through him. The journey to redefine his life was unfolding before his eyes. He grasped fully that the ultimate victory wasn't solely in facing Tony, but in honoring the artist he was born to be. And with that realization came clarity. The path ahead was rife with obstacles, yes, but intertwined with understanding. He was ready to embrace the unknown, whatever it may bring. As the final pieces of the plan came into place and the first rays of morning illuminated the dark corners of the workshop, Jack understood one thing. He was no longer running away from shadows, but stepping towards the light of possibility. He had transformed from a hesitant dreamer into a determined warrior capable of shaping his destiny. The confrontation with Tony would not just be a battle for Sophia's freedom, but a reckoning of Jack's own potential and resilience. The journey was far from over, but today he could finally breathe, standing resolute as not just someone's son, but as Jack Matthews, an architect of his own narrative, ready to reclaim the heart of his life. Now is the time for you to embrace your own journey of transformation. Join us in this powerful movement of reclaiming one's identity by supporting our channel. Subscribe immediately to not miss more exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to contribute to spreading the message of personal strength. Comment your thoughts on Jack's extraordinary journey and share your own theories about what comes next. And remember, you need to share this video with at least 5 friends who are on their own path of self-discovery. This is your moment to show support for stories of overcoming and transformation. Don't wait even one more second to be part of this movement.